welcome to the September the 10th, 1996 pre-taping of a very special history tape. As we are continuing to celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month, this is going to be our history tape number 286, and we are excited today. Daisy Sayas, a very special celebration, always in Mexico, but even a very special celebration in our community and especially in our environs in the Dallas County area. We have with us today an educator that's coming to talk with us today about what's going on in the Grand Prairie ISD. And Mr. Rudy Lopez, we're so glad to have you with us today, young man.
Thank you, Ruth. It's always a pleasure to be on your show.
Yes, yes. And with your title of Director of Multicultural and Educational Activities, plus they've added secondary schools, a second language, and that just gives you something to do all day long, doesn't it?
It sure does.
Yes, all right. Well, we had you on the show last year, but you had, I believe, a little bit more different subject, and you weren't sitting on the dais alone. So today, you're it. And aren't we glad to have you with us? And how exciting has it been with your tenure with the Grand Prairie ISD?
It's really been exciting. I've ventured into another field. I was a school principal, if you recall, a couple of years ago, and I am now the Director of Multicultural Education, as you stated, and secondary ESL. And it gives me a look of education from another perspective.
Yes, it does.
So it's exciting, and I'm enjoying every minute of it.
Now, I don't believe that Grand Prairie, Texas has gotten to the point where we have a parade for Daisy Sayas. We don't have really many special activities for the general public to participate in. So we thought we'd get the ball rolling. We need to have a parade for the independence of Mexico. So tell us a little bit about the history of that. I know you've done just a little research about what we ought to know about that. That was at a very exciting time.
Well, let me tell you a little bit about El 16 de Septiembre, and then let me tell you a little bit about what my job consists of and what we're trying to accomplish.
What you're trying to do with that.
With that.
Good.
Okay. El 16 de Septiembre is one of the most important dates that is celebrated in Mexico.
Yes.
And it was on this date in the year 1810 that the battle for independence in Mexico began.
Oh, yes.
Prior to that, when the Spaniards first came into Mexico, it didn't take them long to recognize the fact that the country was rich in resources. And the natives that were there, that they called Indians, did not seem to be overly aggressive, so they decided that it might be a good idea if they took over the country and kept the Indians under control. And they were able to do that for a while, but it didn't take long before the Indians decided that they were no longer going to put up with the abuse of the Spaniards, and they decided they were going to unite and fight for their rights. And a gentleman who helped organize them in their fight against the Spaniards was a priest by the name of Don Miguel Hidalgo y Costilla. And he helped them in their fight against the Spaniards. And eventually he became known as the father of the country. And for all the work that he had done during the war, all in all, he and the Indians fought the Spaniards for about 11 years. And after all that fighting, Mexico won its independence. They united in their efforts and began to work collectively or together for a more progressive Mexico. Now that's El 16 de Septiembre.
Yes.
Now it fits in very well with what I do at the schools. I am Director of Multicultural Education, and this is just one small segment of the total picture of the total program that we want to implement in the school district. On significant dates such as El 16, we send out materials to the schools to help them, or at least to try to give them some ideas of some activities that they can conduct in their classrooms regarding this specific date. But our overall objective is to teach multicultural education of the different ethnic groups represented in Grand Prairie on a daily basis.
Yes.
We don't want to say this is the Hispanic or Mexican American month, and this is the African American week, and this is the Native American month. We want every day to be everybody's day. And so that is our objective in terms of implementing curriculum. And then we want to, as the teachers begin to teach in their classroom, we want them to teach it from another perspective, looking at every lesson from the perspective of the different ethnic groups and how and what each of the children bring with them to the table, and to use that as an asset rather than a liability.
Do you have specific campuses that are better oriented to being able to carry out your assignment of the multicultural? Are there certain campuses that just really do relate to what you're teaching?
We have been working at different campuses trying to implement different segments of the programs. As we begin to incorporate our program in the school district, we would like to take 3 or 4 campuses and work with them extensively, include the staffs, include everyone at a particular campus, work with them on sensitivity of the different issues, the different cultures, and take out any wrinkles, so to speak, that there might be in it, and then replicate it throughout the district. So we have targeted about three schools that we're going to be working with extensively.
All right, and those schools are?
I have not talked to the principals yet, but I'm going to take the liberty and hope that they will support me.
Yeah.
It'd be Lamar, Travis, and Fannin.
Okay. That's a real good central location to begin with, because we have a pretty good, strong Hispanic and African American, and I believe Puerto Rican and several other ethnic groups in that complex, because that's where I live, and I know they're my neighbors, and I think that's just wonderful.
The other thing about it is our selection was that they are not too big. They're not a Bonham type of a campus that we can get in there and really work and roll up our sleeves and go to work with them and try to clean up whatever it is that we're going to implement on a smaller scale before we're spread out.
Principal Susana Ramirez from Travis was due to be on our show today, and then she got a school assignment that she just couldn't turn down. She couldn't say no to the superintendent, so she said no to us, but she was wonderful. Does she have someone at her campus or at these other 2 campuses that you have mentioned that are specialists, that aid and abet you, that help you do good things in that direction?
Well, let me say this. All of the principals that we have in Grand Prairie are very supportive. They're very supportive, and they support the program. They understand the need for it, and there isn't. I'm not going to say that there's one that supports us more than the other. I think all of them are very supportive of the program.
I know that Gloria Carrillo is so really into the Cinco de Mayo and has promoted that and has done many wonderful things, and especially the dance group that has been promoted at South. And do you have an extension of these in your elementary schools where they're a part of the Folklorico group, or?
No, at the present time, the only Folklorico group that we have is at South. Our department supports it, and we want to see that blossom. And possibly when we get it to where we want it to be, we can take a look at replicating that.
Oh, that is wonderful. All right. Is there any assignment that you need any help from the parents or from anyone that's in video land that you'd like to leave a message with about your important role in the cultural diversity, taking that from the table?
Multicultural education involves everybody in Grand Prairie. And the problems that we have throughout the country can all be brought down to our homes. And what we at the schools want to do is to begin working at trying to help children understand one another, to help children learn to work with one another. And it involves everybody. The stronger the base that we have of support, the better the program that we will have. And we can involve the entire community in supporting our efforts. We will have a multicultural community that works together and lives happily together.
That's wonderful. I know that since we don't celebrate this particular date in Grand Prairie, Texas, I note with a great deal of interest that the Dallas Morning News is doing a fiesta, Daisy says, and that's going to be on September the 14th. And also, Mercedes Oliveira, who writes for the Dallas Morning News, used to be one of the staff reporters who would come out from the Morning News to cover Grand Prairie. And she writes extensively about this and is so excited about it. Do you encourage your kids to write about this history date, or do you encourage them to go over and take part in the fiesta or some of the other things that are happening locally?
Certainly, we encourage the children. I'm sure that those will be part of some of the assignments that they will receive. And on that date, we encourage not only the students, but the parents to participate as well.
Okay. All right, we're going to have to get something and go out and ring the Liberty Bell at least on this the 16th of September when you have the big History Day celebration. And I think we all ought to meet at the Liberty Bell and at least ring the bell, and let people know that we're glad that you received your independence, just like we were glad when America received their independence. And so I think we can look at it from both sides of the table, can't we? Would you like to look out into your camera now and talk to the parents about their role, what you could expect of them, and how they can help you help the boys and girls? You have about a minute and a half.
I believe that we as parents, and I include myself because I have children of my own, I believe that we as parents can help if we try to work with our children, try to be alert in terms of what is going on with our children, to make sure that they don't call anybody names that they shouldn't be calling, to make sure that they do whatever they can to respect other children that they play with, to learn to get along with the other children, and try to explain to them why some children do certain things one way or perhaps different from the way they do it, and try to help them understand other children, other cultures, other beliefs, and other ways of life.
Well, that's a wonderful exhortation to parents, and I think that if everyone would take that to heart, it's going to be a better Grand Prairie because of everyone working together in love and harmony and for the cultural differences. Rudy, I want to thank you so much. You're just real precious to...
Thank you.
I want to thank you for moving up one of your appointments for at least 15 or 30 minutes so you could be here today, because you get caught in that that school trap that we all do, that we have to be there on time every time that they want us. And I want to thank you for making that extra effort today.
Thank you for inviting me.
And being a part of this wonderful history tape.
Thank you.
And we'll be right back with the second part of our 286th interview.
Yippee-yi-ki-yo, get along, little doggy. Would you look at this mess? If I ever get my hands on the yahoos responsible for messing up these beautiful Texas roads, I'm gonna say, moo, moo.
I didn't know longhorns could talk.
Me neither.
Horses, I've seen horses talk.
And pigs, remember that movie?
That was a great movie.
I love that pig.
And as we continue our celebration of the Hispanic Heritage Month, we're very excited on our second part of our interview to have a very special young man with us for this history tape number 286. A young man that is really new to the scene of Grand Prairie, but he is not new to the scene of historical research on Daisy Sayas. And we're just so pleased to welcome a very special young man, Alfonso Rincon.
Alfonso Rincon. I'm very glad to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Yes, you're new in Grand Prairie, Texas.
Brand new.
Brand new. You're still using a map to get around to how many campuses?
12 campuses of the GPISD.
12 campuses with the Grand Prairie ISD. And what is your official capacity? What do you do for the boys and girls of Grand Prairie?
My official title is Title I Parent Facilitator, And my role in these 12 campuses, these are Title I campuses, will be to develop parent involvement programs. And so that means
Yes.
developing parent skills so that they can not only better their own lives, but just as important to be able to support their children by having the skills to meet the needs of their children, to improve communication between the parents and the schools, and to do whatever else is necessary to bridge a gap that may exist in communication between the schools and the parents that live in the neighborhoods around these campuses.
Wonderful. And your home-based campus, where you could be reached in the event that anyone in our viewing audience might want to talk with you, where is that?
I am based at Fannin Elementary on 28th Street.
Okay.
It's just right off of Main, and it's not far from Travis and Lamar elementary schools.
Do you have a magic telephone number there that they could reach you in the event they need to get in touch with you?
I am so new that I have trouble remembering my phone number. I believe it's 262-8668, extension 12.
That's exactly right, because that's my home school, and I know that number. That's great. All right, and they could call you there and leave a message
Sure.
if they need to get in touch
Sure.
with you.
They can call there anytime, and even if I'm not there, and I'll be doing a lot of running around, as you can imagine.
Yes.
But I've got the secretaries there are very, very efficient in taking messages for me and getting them to me, so that should be no problem.
What does a regular daily schedule look like to Alfonso when he goes to work at Fannin, and then the first thing you do, what do you do?
Well, actually, because I'm so new, it is a changing scenario. It began rather quietly, where I had to simply look for documentation about what had been done in the past so I could get a sense for what had been done.
Yes.
And give me some structure. But ever since then, as I have had to move forward and develop a draft agenda for myself, the first phase being needs assessment, I have been designing forums to gather information from the different levels of potential participation, from the people that I feel have a good insight as to what needs to be done or what the needs might be. And so that, with that phase goes meeting principals, going to campuses so I know where they are, driving through neighborhoods so I get a sense for what the neighborhoods look like, the lay of the land, so to speak. And little by little meeting community people, and being here today is another good example of where I'm connecting with people in the community, and the media being a very important component that I look forward to working with, because I have a media background myself and realize how important it is in promoting any project that's important to the community.
Plays and poetry readings, historical research, all about the artist. And when I read this bio, I'm just very, very excited about the capabilities that you bring to our city.
Well, there's a sense in which Grand Prairie is benefiting from the fact that I have had a long, long history of research and searching. I graduated from high school in 1969, and one of the things that I realized soon after graduation from high school was that I knew very little about the background of a Tejano community.
Yes.
That is to say, those generations really roughly between 1850 and up to the 1950s when I was born. And so I had questions. There were mysteries that occurred to me, and I wanted answers. And so I began to do some digging around, and sure enough, even though there isn't nearly the kind of documentation you'd want to find so that you can get a lot of details, I began to identify documentation, rare manuscripts, sometimes hidden away in libraries, in college libraries. And I began to see this fascinating drama that has really been developing, and one starting point could be Hidalgo's Grito. Hidalgo's Grito is a very, very appropriate starting point to begin to understand the contributions of the Tejano community, because, and I think this is a very, very important thing to remember about 16. Hidalgo's Grito, which initiated that rebellion in 1810, did not happen over there.
Yes.
Now, what I mean by that is that we have to understand these historical moments in their context. In 1810, Mexico and Texas were colonies of Spain.
Yes.
So it didn't happen over there. It happened here by virtue of the fact that it happened in the same area that Hidalgo was in. Okay, we were different locations, but the governmental entity was the same, namely that we were colonies of Spain. And not only that, but the Grito had a very, very important impact on those Spanish colonials that were living in the most important and northernmost outpost of the Spanish presence in the Americas, and that is the post of San Antonio de Béjar, which is where Bexar County gets its name from. It's really Béjar. There are some events that transpired with the Grito of Hidalgo, which in my opinion and based on my research, resulted in the revolution, or the nature of the revolution of 1836, which ended on April 21st with the Battle of San Jacinto, and in which Tejanos were very much involved in the leadership
Yes.
of that decisive battle.
Yes. Well, you have just brought a new light to the boys and girls, because you can portray to them some depth of research that has not been brought to them before.
Right, and you can imagine how I feel like I almost want to jump into discussions when I see what is really rather platitudinous discussions, you know, and then there isn't very much in-depth discussion, and what I see is this very, very fascinating drama that has been taking place of tragedy, of struggle, and in fact, these are the sorts of things that are so American and is such great potential for providing a common ground for the United States, for example, and the Mexican people, because there were some very basic principles and concepts that were driving and motivating these people that were very similar to the struggles of the colonies in the United States, which had taken place earlier. And so when I see the potential for these cultural linkages, but yet manifesting themselves in such unique and colorful ways, reflecting the respective cultures in which they happen, I get real excited. And that's what prompted me when I began to become fascinated by this. I said to myself, you know, why isn't this in the history books, in the schools? And I think part of that is because of the nature of the bureaucracy and the nature of the business of publishing textbooks. It is a very, very slow process. Change in curricula, I think, is a very slow process. So I asked myself, how can I accelerate this? Well, my first response to that was for myself to get involved in community events and bring that depth and promote that awareness, which I feel is very important to have in order to have genuine enrichment and genuine appreciation of what happened. And then as I thought some more, I realized, but how can I make it really come to life? And I realized that a very important way to do that is to write children's plays in which the children come on stage and develop all the talents that develop when you have them on stage. But they begin to recite speeches that were spoken by these very important people, where they begin to wear costumes that reflect those times, where they even dance with music that reflects those times. For example, when I wrote the play on Cinco de Mayo, I integrated ballet folklorico dance using music, like for example the mariachi music, which was very much influenced by the French intervention in Mexico. And so these are all very neat ways in which you can bring these cultural traditions into play on stage with the children, and it is a fantastic way for the children to learn, because I'll guarantee you they do not get bored, they blossom instead.
Yes.
And so I am very excited, and in fact the energy that I felt explode within myself when I first became aware of these historical facts, they still drive me as if that discovery had been made yesterday. You know, it's just so fascinating about what happened in our history. And it helps, it's a very clarifying experience, and I just wish I could do a better job of sharing it with people so that we would really understand what it has taken to make Texas, the Southwest, and this country. Because Texas, the culture of Texas, which cannot be separated from the culture of the Tejano community, has had a tremendous formative experience or role in the formation of the United States. You talk about the Western tradition, the vaquero cowboy tradition, it's all over this country. It's a big draw in our identity. And where does it come from? It comes from those ranchos, the Tejano ranchos that were between San Antonio and Victoria, down the San Antonio River Valley. That's where that identity began to really be established in this part of the world.
Wonderful. All right, now how about poetry?
Well, it's basically the same story. You might say that my plays or the poetry put in on stage and acted out and spoken. But the poetry was before I wrote the plays. The poetry was my need to express what I felt in terms of what I was reading and injecting, as it were, my emotion. Because like I say, it has been a very, very strong emotional experience for me to find out these things and to want to share them. And so when we had such occasions as a dedication of the Jose Antonio historical marker in the little community of Geronimo, where he had a rancho, the Juan Seguin burial site is in Seguin, Texas. So when I saw these opportunities, I wrote the historical poetry to commemorate these individual men, but I also went back to the arrival of the Spaniards and before, and began to put that in a poetic flow, so that we can connect all these events and really sense the flow of the history that makes us what we are.
And what do you want to be when you grow up?
What I want to be when I grow up is I want to I want to be able to have more time to do more research
Yes.
and to complete the work that I feel I need to do yet. One strand of that work, and time is running out for me, and which is why I can relate to what you've done in your history model here, is that I want to be able to interview the people that are, say, 70 to 100 years old or older if they're there, and talk to them, that represent the Mexican-American presence in Central Texas from the turn of the century up to about 1940, because that is a very, very strong part of the Texas culture, and I'd like to have oral interviews recorded and then converted into some sort of history book so that that history is not lost after these people are die, and they're dying right now. People don't realize that Guadalupe, Caldwell County area of Central Texas had the biggest concentration of Mexican immigrants not long after the turn of the century. And those families have since dispersed into Dallas, Fort Worth, San Antonio, and Houston, because that's where the next phase of industrialization went. Once the cotton picker came in, there was no need for the extensive numbers of immigrants and laborers to run agriculture in this state. And so it's a very important part of our history.
In about the half minute that we have left, would you like to look out into your camera and speak to the parents that you're going to be interfacing with in all of these campuses, and tell them how important it is that they get in touch with you and that you develop a wonderful rapport with them?
Sure. I certainly want to extend an invitation to all you parents that are watching those programs. Si son de habla español, que por favor estén en contacto conmigo. Estoy en la escuela Fannin. If you want to get in contact with me, I'm at Fannin Elementary. I look forward to meeting each and every one of you. I am particularly interested at this point in finding out what you think are the needs of your children and how you as a parent can play a bigger role in working with your school. That is what I need to know right now, so that the programs that I develop and the energies that I put into this program is relevant to your needs. I don't want to come in with only my ideas and I start doing all sorts of things, and next thing I know, people are asking, what am I doing and what is it for? I want to reflect your needs, and the only way I can do that is by you contacting me at Fannin Elementary, and we can work together. And I look forward to meeting you. The people I've met so far have been wonderful. They look like they're anxious and eager to move forward, and I'm certainly part of that flow. So I look forward to hearing from you. Thank you very much.
That's wonderful. Now, I do know that you have a beautiful wife that works at Travis, and we better mention her name or you're in bad trouble.
Yes. My wife is a counselor. She is the counselor at Travis Elementary, and her name is Carmen Rincon, and she's also very busy working with the parents there. That's a big part of her job. As a matter of fact, she and I are working together on a 16 cultural activity there, where we want to include the parents in a play that she has done in elementary schools when she was a bilingual teacher. And so that will be an opportunity for me to work with some parents and the children and do some of the things we've done in the past. It's been a lot of fun.
I want to thank you for this interview. It's just been wonderful.
Thank you very much.
For helping us to wrap up number 286 for Hispanic Heritage Month.
Thank you very much.
And this is Ruthie Jackson reminding you that history is as we live and do. We'll just visit a moment.